I was lying in a hospital bed, still numb from giving birth, when my phone buzzed. I thought it was my husband finally calling, but instead it was a photo, my sister in bed with him, captioned, "Happy Motherhood, he's mine now." That was the moment my heart cracked wide open, but it was also the moment I decided I wouldn't stay broken. Hi, I'm Jenna, and this is the story of how I turned betrayal into power and chose my daughter over the people who tried to destroy me. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way, I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water, and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. They say sisters are supposed to be your first best friend. Mine taught me how quiet cruelty can shape your whole life. For most of my childhood, I shared a hallway and a battlefield with my older sister, Elaine. Just 1 year apart, but somehow we were always miles away from understanding each other. People used to say we looked alike, and maybe we did, but that's where the similarities ended. She was loud, magnetic, a firecracker at family gatherings. I was the quiet one in the corner with a sketch pad and a dog-eared book. Mom used to whisper, "She's just jealous." Like it was a phase Elaine would grow out of, like it was a rash or a poor haircut. But jealousy doesn't just fade, it festers. And it doesn't just look like eye rolls or cold shoulders, it looks like a trophy shattered in your living room. I was 14 when I won the state speech contest. I still remember the way the auditorium lights made everything look golden. They called my name, and I walked up to the stage with knees shaking, but my heart full. From the corner of my eye, I saw Elaine in the crowd. She was holding a small bouquet. She dropped it the moment I smiled. We didn't speak on the ride home. Dad tried to lighten the mood with a joke about me running for office someday. Mom suggested stopping for milkshakes. Elaine stared out the window. I carried my trophy inside and placed it on the shelf next to some old art ribbons. Before I even took off my backpack, Elaine walked in, lifted the trophy without a word, and slammed it down on the hardwood floor. It cracked in half. My parents stood frozen. For a moment, I thought my dad might yell, but instead, he looked at Elaine, then at me, and said softly, "Maybe it's time we all talk to someone." Elaine went to therapy for 3 sessions. She came back saying the therapist was biased, that some people just don't understand strong women. She never went again. We didn't talk about it after that. We didn't talk about much of anything. Over the next couple of years, I found small places where I could exist without her shadow choking me. I started a little blog, just musings about high school, the books I was reading, the awkwardness of growing up. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet space that felt like mine. I wrote under a pen name. Somehow, Elaine still found it. She laughed about it at dinner once. "People actually read that? What, do they enjoy boredom?" A month later, she launched her own blog. Same layout, similar name, same voice. Except hers didn't feel like her. It was like she tried to copy the color of something but missed the warmth behind it. The worst part? She'd ask mutual friends to share her posts and tag me in them with fake encouragement. My little sis inspired me to try blogging. The words stung more than if she'd insulted me outright. One Christmas, Mom gave us matching silver bracelets. Mine had a tiny star engraved on the inside. "For my girls," she said, her eyes hopeful, "I wore mine every day." Elaine tossed hers in the kitchen trash the next morning. I found it under a peel of orange rind. I used to think if I just stayed quiet, if I made myself small enough, Elaine would stop seeing me as a threat. But I was wrong. Her anger wasn't about anything I did. It was about who I was and how that made her feel about herself. One night, I went down to the basement to grab an old sketchbook. The light was already on. I crept down the steps and froze. Elaine was standing by the utility shelf, holding one of my speech certificates. In her other hand was a lighter. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes didn't see me at first. There was no flame yet. But the intention was there. Thick, hot, undeniable. She looked up, startled. Neither of us spoke. I just turned around and walked back upstairs. Some hurts don't need to be screamed. Some betrayals don't need an audience. I wasn't afraid of what she'd do to that paper. I was afraid of what staying near her was doing to me. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling fan, its blades circling like thoughts that couldn't land. I realized then, if I stayed in that house under her shadow, I'd never get to become myself. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to start planning how I'd leave. Lucas didn't just love me, he noticed me. And that felt like enough. By the time I arrived at St. Clair University in Vermont, I was ready to disappear into a new version of myself. Greenville felt 1,000 miles behind me, and for the first time, I could breathe without checking if someone was watching over my shoulder. There were no broken trophies here, just the crunch of autumn leaves underfoot and mornings that smelled like cinnamon and roasted coffee beans from the little shop near campus. I rented a small dorm room on the top floor of an old brick building. The walls were thin, the radiator clanked, but I'd never felt more at peace. I started blogging again, this time with my real name. I wrote about student life, the hidden joy of solo walks, the relief of having space. I didn't expect anyone to read it, but within a few weeks, people were commenting. A few local shops even offered small gift cards in exchange for posts. It was modest, but it felt earned. One crisp October afternoon, I was volunteering at a student seminar on nonprofit media when a guy with chestnut hair and a navy hoodie asked if the seat next to me was taken. He smiled before I answered. "I've been reading your blog," he said. "It's honest, like talking to someone who knows where your quiet lives." That was Lucas Carter. He was the kind of person who remembered the names of janitors and always carried Band-Aids in his wallet because you never know. We became friends first, slowly, deliberately. We swapped books at The Reading Mug, a tiny cafe with chipped mugs and the best pumpkin scones in town. We talked about everything, our families, our fears, the music we secretly loved. With Lucas, I didn't have to be funny or impressive. I just had to be present. One Sunday morning, we went to the farmer's market and he bought a small sunflower plant from a local vendor. "For your windowsill," he said, brushing my knuckles with his. I don't know why that moment stuck. Maybe because no one had ever given me something that was meant to grow. We officially started dating that winter. The first time he kissed me, we were sitting on a park bench watching ducks wobble across frozen grass. My scarf was tangled, and I was laughing. He leaned in, and everything just paused. But life has its turns. In our junior year, Lucas's younger brother, Ethan, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. He was only 19. I met him once before the diagnosis. Quiet, sarcastic in a sweet way, with eyes that seemed older than his age. After the diagnosis, everything shifted. Lucas spent weekends back in New Hampshire. I started tagging along, helping wherever I could, hospital runs, soup deliveries, late-night chats when no one else could sleep. Ethan and I grew close. He had a way of speaking truth without drama. One night, while we sat beside his hospital bed, he looked at me and said, "You don't talk to Lucas like people who date. You talk like people who would survive anything." Then he grinned. "Even your burnt spaghetti." His decline was slow and cruel, but through it all, Lucas and I held on to each other like driftwood. We didn't say much about the future. We just kept moving through each moment. On graduation day, the skies were clear and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass. I walked out of the auditorium, my cap crooked, my nerves steady. There, under the maple tree in front of the library, Lucas stood in his wrinkled button-up holding a small box. "I know we've seen more grief than most people our age," he said, "but I also know I've never been more sure of anything than I am about you." He opened the box, a silver ring, simple and warm. I didn't cry because I was surprised. I cried because, for once, I wasn't being compared to anyone. I wasn't an obligation or a second choice. I said yes. That night, I posted a short note on my blog, just a photo of the ring in my palm and the caption, "He asked." I said yes. Life is allowed to be kind too. I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed. A comment notification. The username was new, Sister Superior. The comment read, "Even sick people can be props, huh?" I stood there, toothbrush in hand, heart thudding. My chest tightened, not from surprise, but from recognition. Elaine never liked being quiet for too long. The second pink line appeared before I was ready. But maybe that's when life starts for real. It was a Tuesday morning. Late summer light was pouring through the blinds in our small bathroom back in Greenville, and the Tess sat on the sink like it might burst into flames. I stared at those two lines until my knees gave out and I sat on the floor. My hands were shaking. I wasn't scared, not exactly, just suspended. Like the world had exhaled and I forgot how to breathe. I thought about Ethan. He once told me, "We think we have time, but time always moves first." He was talking about cancer, about not waiting to say what matters. I didn't realize then how those words would echo when life arrived without asking for permission. Lucas was upstairs, still asleep. I crawled into bed beside him and whispered, "I think we're going to be parents." He blinked slowly, wrapped his arm around me and mumbled, "Wow." Okay. That was all. No smile, no question. Just quiet. At first I made excuses for his distance. He was still grieving Ethan, I told myself. Some people needed more time. I understood that better than most. But weeks passed, and he stayed withdrawn. Coming home late, missing doctor appointments, forgetting things he used to double-check. He didn't ask about the nursery. He didn't pick baby names with me. Meanwhile, I was in full nesting mode. I folded tiny socks into drawers and ordered a paper crane mobile from a local artist. I lined up board books on a shelf by color. I played lullabies out loud, hoping something would stir in him. But all I got was silence, or worse, guilt. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "I'm tired too, Jenna," as if exhaustion was a competition. Mom was my constant. She brought soup in mason jars and sat with me in the nursery while I unwrapped swaddles and washed onesies. Sometimes she'd press her hand to my belly and smile like she could already feel my daughter's soul. Around the start of my third trimester, Elaine reappeared. She called one evening out of the blue. "I heard through Mom," she said, voice all sugary concern. "Thought I could help out a bit." I wanted to hang up. I didn't. Maybe I was desperate. Maybe I still believed people changed. She brought takeout, offered to walk the dog, even cleaned the kitchen once, though she left half the plates, so I wouldn't feel useless. Lucas barely reacted to her presence. If anything, he seemed more relaxed when she was around. The three of us never sat in the same room. It was always me upstairs resting while she chatted with him in the living room, laughing a little too easily at things he never used to say. Then she started wearing his hoodie. It was old, navy, slightly frayed at the cuffs. I'd given it to him our first year of dating. I found it one morning draped over Elaine's chair, sleeves still warm. I said nothing. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know. The night I went into labor, everything happened too fast. It was late, maybe 1 a.m. I felt the first wave of pain in the kitchen while reaching for water. I called for Lucas. No answer. I checked the bedroom. Empty. His car wasn't in the driveway. I texted, called, left voicemails. Then I called my mom. She arrived in 15 minutes, her hair still pinned from sleep. She helped me to the car, holding my hand the whole way. "We've got you," she whispered. "You and that baby are going to be just fine." At the hospital, the contractions came fast and heavy. Between breaths, I checked my phone. Nothing from Lucas. The nurse dimmed the lights and told me to focus on my breathing. My mom stayed by my side, her grip firm and calm. I was shaking with pain and fear and the hollow thud of heartbreak. Then my phone buzzed. I thought, maybe finally he's coming. But it wasn't him. It was Elaine. A photo. Lucas in bed. Her beside him. Bare shoulders. His arm draped across her like it belonged there. The caption? "Happy motherhood. He's mine now." The world didn't spin. It stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry right then. I just stared, numb, as if my mind had gone into lockdown. My body kept going, because it had no choice. Another contraction hit, then another. When Aurora arrived, the room filled with her first cry, and something inside me tore. Not my body, that would heal, but something else, something deeper, older. The girl who used to shrink in Elaine's shadow, she shattered that night, and in her place someone new began to rise. I looked at my daughter, her tiny fingers curled against my chest, and whispered through the tears, "You're safe now. I've got you." And I meant it with every fiber of my being, because love doesn't always come with warmth. Sometimes it arrives with fire. Aurora came into the world while I was falling apart, and somehow holding her made me feel like I might survive. The delivery room felt colder than I expected, not the kind of cold you fix with a blanket, but the sterile, humming chill of hospital lights and metal railings. I remember gripping my mom's hand like it was the only thing anchoring me to this earth. Her voice was steady, whispering that I could do this, that I wasn't alone. The doctor said, "It's a girl." A nurse placed Aurora on my chest, skin to skin. She was so small, her cries more like whispers than wails. I wanted to feel everything in that moment, joy, awe, the miracle everyone talks about. But all I felt was the sound of my own heart cracking beneath the weight of what I'd just seen. He's mine now. Those words. That photo. It kept flashing behind my eyes like a cruel watermark on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Lucas, bare-chested in our bed. Elaine smirking like she'd won a prize she didn't even want. Mom didn't ask questions. She saw the message too. She didn't speak, but her eyes told me everything. You don't have to fall apart in front of me. I already know. After they moved us to a private room, Nurse Valerie came in with warm hands and a calming voice. She helped me guide Aurora to latch for the first time. "She's strong," she smiled. "Good grip for someone under 7 pounds. I nodded but couldn't find my voice. My body was drained, but it wasn't the labor that exhausted me. It was the betrayal, the shame, the realization that Lucas had chosen the one person who knew exactly how to break me. When Aurora drifted to sleep in her bassinet, I called him. He picked up on the 4th ring. His voice was low, too calm. "What's wrong, Sophia?" I didn't correct the name. He always called me that when he wanted to sound detached, formal. I asked him why. I asked how long. I asked if it meant anything. There was a long pause. Then he said, "It started after Ethan died. I felt lost. Elaine was there. You weren't. That's all. Not an apology, just an explanation dressed in apathy. She listened," he added. I hung up before he could finish. It wasn't just what he did. It was how casually he carried it. Like I'd missed an appointment and he'd simply rescheduled love. That night, with the room dim and silent except for the soft beeping of monitors, I turned on my laptop. The screen glowed like a spotlight in the dark. I opened a new folder, custody folder, evidence. I didn't cry, not then. I just moved methodically. Screenshots of Elaine's message, voicemails, bank records, anything that might help me build the case I already knew I had to make. This wasn't about revenge. This was about protection. I looked over at Aurora asleep in her swaddle, her tiny fingers curled like commas in a sentence not yet written. "You are the reason I'm standing," I whispered, because I wasn't standing for myself anymore. I was standing for her, for every night she would need a mother who didn't fold. For every question she'd someday ask about love and loyalty, and every answer I'd have to give without bitterness in my voice. The nurse came in quietly around 5 a.m. and took Aurora for her routine check. Mom was asleep on the pull-out chair, arms crossed over her chest, lips pressed into a line of worry even in rest. I stood slowly, legs shaky, and walked to the bathroom. The mirror was slightly fogged from the radiator. I wiped it clean and looked at myself. Really looked. For the first time since the birth. My eyes were bloodshot, my hair matted, my shoulders slumped, but underneath the exhaustion was something sharper, steadier. "You know what you have to do," I said, and for once I believed it. Some families break slowly. Mine shattered all at once, with a gavel, a signature, and silence. The courthouse didn't look like the kind of place where lives change. It smelled like copier paper and lukewarm coffee, beige walls, ticking clocks, and benches filled with people clinging to pieces of their lives. I sat in the hallway clutching a manila folder. Inside it, screenshots, call logs, printed emails, every little thread that formed the tapestry of betrayal. Bernard Fox sat beside me, tapping his pen lightly against his legal pad. He wasn't what I expected from a custody lawyer. No flashy suit, no booming voice, just calm eyes and a way of saying, "You've got this, Mama Bear," that made me believe it. He asked me once more, "You sure about supervised visits only?" I nodded. He left me in labor and showed up in my sister's bed. He didn't just lose my trust. He abandoned his daughter before she ever opened her eyes. Bernard nodded and tucked the folder under his arm. "Then let's do this." Inside the courtroom, Lucas looked smaller than I remembered. He wore a gray jacket he hadn't ironed, and his hair fell in his eyes. When he saw me, he didn't nod or speak, just turned his face away. The judge was a woman in her 60s, with tired eyes and a voice like winter. She listened carefully as Lucas's lawyer tried to argue that I was emotionally withholding and refused to let him bond with Aurora. I didn't speak. Bernard did. He laid it all out, calmly, respectfully. The missed appointments, the night I went into labor alone, the photo, the messages, the fact that Lucas had made no effort outside of court to see Aurora or provide for her beyond the minimum. He ended with this. This mother did not shut anyone out. She showed up, every day, alone, and now she's here, for her daughter. The judge didn't need long. She awarded me full custody. Lucas was granted supervised visits twice a month. The court ordered a formal parenting class and required monthly reports from a child welfare liaison. Lucas didn't object. He just stared at the floor, jaw clenched, fingers twitching in his lap. Outside, the sun was high and warm. I exhaled for the first time in weeks. My parents waited on the courthouse steps. Dad gave me a nod, nothing more. Mom touched my shoulder gently, her hand trembling. We stopped at a little cafe across the street. While I sipped iced tea, Russell cleared his throat and said to no one in particular, "Elaine is no longer welcome in this family. No drama, no speech, just a line drawn." Later that night, I was nursing Aurora when my phone buzzed. It was her. Elaine. I hesitated. Then I answered. She was crying. Gasping, really. "I'm pregnant," she said. "It's Lucas's. He doesn't want it. He told me to get rid of it. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes. She kept talking. "You're the only one who will pick up. Mom and Dad won't even look at me. Please, Jenna, you can't abandon me now." I looked at the baby in my arms, her tiny mouth, the rise and fall of her chest, the soft warmth of someone who didn't ask for any of this. I thought of every birthday stolen, every lie spun like sugar, every time Elaine made me feel like I was nothing. "You burned the bridge, Elaine," I said quietly. "I'm not rebuilding it." She started screaming. "You'll regret this. I swear, you will." I waited a beat, then replied, "I already don't." And I hung up. Not out of cruelty, but out of peace. Some people dig graves between you and them, then hand you a shovel and expect you to build a bridge. I was done holding the tools for my own undoing. Peace doesn't come like a parade. It comes in tiny moments, like my daughter saying, "Good morning," with syrup on her face and her hair sticking out like dandelion fluff. Our apartment isn't big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a living room that gets flooded with light around 9:30 every morning. There's a pothos plant on the windowsill I keep forgetting to water, and Aurora's crayon masterpieces are taped proudly across the fridge like they belong in a gallery. It's not the life I imagined, but it's the life I built. After everything with Lucas and Elaine, I thought the hardest part would be letting go of the betrayal. But it wasn't. The hardest part was learning to carry it without letting it shape every part of me. Ethan once said, "You don't move on from pain, you carry it differently." He was right. I got a job at a local media firm downtown, not glamorous but steady. I write newsletters, manage their social accounts, sometimes pitch story ideas. The team is small and the office smells like cinnamon tea and old carpet, but every time I sign my name at the bottom of a press release, I feel grounded. Chloe, our nanny, has become family. She's 25, kind, a psychology student who tells me the best toddler tips come from her grandma, not her textbooks. She helps with daycare pickups when I'm running late and always remembers Aurora's favorite snack, carrot sticks dipped in peanut butter. On weekends, my parents come over. Dad reads Aurora books in his deep voice while Mom sneaks her extra bites of banana muffins. They never bring up Elaine, not anymore. It's like we all silently agreed that some wounds heal better without picking at the scab. Aurora turned 1 last month. We baked cupcakes together. Well, I baked. She mostly licked frosting and stuck star-shaped sprinkles to her forehead. Chloe made a balloon arch out of old party leftovers, and my mom brought a paper crown she found at the dollar store. We lit 1 candle. Aurora clapped when it flickered, like the flame itself was magic. After the cupcakes, my mom leaned in and kissed my cheek. "You did it, honey," she whispered. "You really did." Sometimes, late at night, when the dishes are done and Aurora is snoring softly in her crib, I sit with a mug of tea and think about Elaine. I picture her in some quiet room, maybe holding her own baby, maybe still searching for a feeling that makes her feel whole. But the ache is gone. There's no hate, just distance, just space. Lucas sends child support like clockwork. No extra notes, no messages. Just deposits, cold and mechanical. He hasn't asked about Aurora in months. I've stopped expecting him to. One evening, I was folding laundry when Aurora toddled over and climbed into my lap. She wrapped her arms around my neck, her little voice muffled against my sweater. "I'm glad you're my mommy." And I lost it. Not from sadness, not from regret, but from something deeper, something close to grace. I held her tight and let the tears fall quietly. Because sometimes the joy comes not from what we overcome, but from who we become after. Later that night, I opened my old blog for the first time in years. I stared at the blank page for a while, wondering if I still had anything to say. Then I started typing. I thought betrayal would define me, but it didn't. My daughter did. I hit publish. And in that quiet room, lit only by the street lamp outside our window, I knew. This was the ending I had been writing toward all along. Not the end of the pain, but the beginning of peace. Sometimes, healing comes not in grand gestures, but in the soft weight of a toddler's hug and the quiet click of publish on a blog you thought you'd never return to. In Aurora's smile, I found the strength to carry everything I'd once thought would break me. Life doesn't always give us the family we deserve, but it gives us the chance to become the kind of love we never had. When we choose peace over pride and self-respect over approval, we rewrite what family can mean. As Ethan once said, "You don't move on from pain, you carry it differently." And I've learned to carry mine with gentleness. If this story spoke to something in your own heart, I'd be honored to hear your thoughts. Whether it's a comment, a quiet reflection, or simply passing this along to someone who needs it, thank you for listening.